Mary, you got to learn, in my opinion, from just one of the most amazing men out there. Richard has so many wonderful, wonderful things. Doug and I went and met with him in his place out there in Albuquerque and got to just spend some time with him. And at that time, I didn't know anything that I knew about the Enneagram, but I had not heard from him. I had not read his books. And it was like everybody else seemed to know who he was first. So what a gift to have come in through that. What a beautiful heart he has. I'm going to go ahead and get started because it's 8:15 and I don't want to keep anybody longer than you want to be kept. But I wanted to just kind of, I think the first couple of weeks, my nerves were real shaky. And so I've done a meditation before tonight. I feel very centered. And I thought, I kind of just start. I think that's like, okay, we're in class, let's get started. But I often will say, namaste to people who that's their language. They're from the yoga community. That seems, they're not the only ones, but it's prevalent there. And I love that. I love when somebody says that. And I just want to say that tonight. And according to, the yogis or some other Eastern traditions, they say that to say the divine in me recognizes the divine in you, or the spirit in me recognizes the spirit in you. That's what I hope we are gathering in a place like that, is to say we are kindred spirits and we're all on this divine journey together. I want to thank you all last week who were willing to share your comments. That was very brave. We hadn't had that the first week because nobody had a journal handout, but every one of them was so special. And I actually, in reflecting on all of them, of course, Lee spoke to us about the instincts and from her perspective, and each of you gave such wonderful points for me to consider. And that's what I keep saying. Yes, I'm the facilitator, but this is my journey as well. And when Megan started talking about the generational story, the handout that I gave you, in my mind, when I was giving you that to reflect on, it was like, well, what generation are you from? Are you a millennial or a boomer or Gen X or, whatever it is. And we all know that the generation that we were born in has certainly had an influence on the way we perceive the life and how our story has been built around it. But when she started talking about the story that's been passed down from her great-grandmother and her grandparents to her parents and her, and the way she was talking about, she questioned that story, just her generational story. And Mary, I'll just, you watched the recording, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, well, I did.
When she grew up with the idea that life is hard and the joy will be in the future, in the afterlife. So that's really what our focus is. And she questioned that. That was, to me, I was just like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful insight for just that one little line that I said, generation. And she took that and became really more introspective. And I gained so much from that because I began thinking, yeah, the generational stories I grew up with, especially in terms of our spirituality, stopped with me. And that caused a big heartache in my family. That's a whole other story. But we all come to these times of life where we may question our generational upbringing. And, I just love her perspective. So when you see Megan later, tell her that's what I say. I saw her in the background.
Oh, did you? She'll be here in like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm sure.
I'm kidding. She's fine.
Oh no, I thought you did see her. She's
sorry, was right by. But I think that's what this story is about, being able to pause and look at the things that have been habitual stories, and even more as we're looking at the handouts, what are our habitual patterns? It's only when we recognize them that we can question them and ask, is this really the story that I still need? And the reason I say need is because we have been talking about this from the beginning with the caterpillar. We need these stories as we're developing them. When we're children, we begin to form the stories of our mind that make us feel safe and loved. And so none of us get away with not having our generational stories, our influences. Like Mary, you said you saw the Charles Eisenstein
Yes.
video where he talks about trauma. Maybe that trauma was just you had to change schools a lot, or you went from daycare to daycare, or you didn't get to connect with somebody. All of these things add to our stories as we grow. And it's not until we get to a certain point that we even begin to question, do I need that story? So I want to ask, has anybody ever had, this seems like a real 180 turn here, but has anybody ever had a floater like in their eye? Yeah, you know what I'm
Two
talking
big
about?
ones.
What'd you say?
Two big ones.
Oh, well, the first time I ever had one, I'll just tell you this quickly because it's really funny. Doug and I were at the Waffle House. So you're in those little booths and the waitress is just right there by you. And all of a sudden I started doing like that, and I kept, and it was just right there. And I was like,
Thought it was a bug.
it was about, and my husband was sitting perfectly still. He's a 9 and he's not about to come in and go, help me with this craziness. But I asked the waitress, I said, do you not see that bug? And she said, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And well, at that moment, I knew for sure that I had a brain tumor. Something was dressed terribly wrong. I had never even heard of a floater. And so it freaked me out. Come to find out, oh yeah, this happens. People get them. Well, if you've had one, then you know that eventually you adjust. You don't even see them anymore, right? I told my husband, mine looked like Abraham Lincoln. It looked like this little thing with a top hat on it. So if I'd see it, I'd say, oh, Abraham Lincoln is here. But I never even notice it anymore. That is not, well, it is like a scotoma. Are y'all familiar with the word scotoma? I think it's just the technical word for a blind spot. So if your vision, sometimes you can actually have part of your vision impaired, and it's an actual blind spot. And sometimes you adjust to it. Most of the time we just, make those little shifts so we don't run into everything. We adjust to the blind spot. Well, we can have what I call scotomas. I didn't come up with that in our life. And it can be something as simple as, there's something broken in your house and you just kind of go around it. So like if you have a broken tile in your floor and you just walk around it, and pretty soon over time, you do not even realize, you don't even think about there's a broken tile because you've adjusted. And it's really not until maybe you trip over it or somebody else does that you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to continue to just walk around it. Let me just fix it, right? Well, this is what we're talking about. It's really the blind spots that are the stories that we keep on repeat, or we keep not really stopping and pausing and questioning and saying, wait, is this my story? Or has it just been something I've walked around, adjusted to, and now I've bumped up against it? Like maybe you tripped over that tile. Well, you've bumped up against a belief or a pattern, a reaction, something that says, whoa, I didn't even realize I was doing that. I'm so on autopilot that I didn't even know I was doing that. So that's what I hope we are doing here, is becoming aware of our blind spots. And when we're doing this, when we begin to unfold some of those layers, then you begin to question, well, wait, what else is there that I'm walking around? Well, I've always thought this is just the way I am. And you might be really, it can be very emotional. It can send you into a depression and all the different moods that come with a real adjustment in a way of thinking. And the story that we held as, but this is who I am. And then you start questioning. And then it's like, well, why am I here? If this story that I've carried in my heart all my life isn't true, then what is life? Why am I even here? Why have I developed these defense mechanisms, these walls around, for safety and security? If I'm just here to confront and tear them all down, what is the purpose of life? And a lot of us get to that existential crisis of literally, why am I here on this earth? For what? And so I think our stories are the same as we see in nature. It's why I keep using the butterfly, because we have to have these moments of consuming this information, consuming and consuming. And then we let that go as we begin to expand our understanding of the world. But nature is our teacher. So if it is happening in the macro, it's happening on the micro. It's just stopping and waking up to these moments and saying, I am here because I get a choice to question and to decide, how do I want my story to play out? So that being said, I wonder if anybody had some moment of aha-ness in regards to the handout from last week. We kind of went over lesson 1 last week. And so the ones where we looked at what we focus on and what we're missing. I wonder if anybody would want to share some insight or some observations that you had from that handout this week. And if you don't, that's okay. Bueller.
I kind of had a question about it.
Sure.
So I'm a 7, and so I was reading about, what I might miss might be the here and now, because of course I'm always wanting exciting plans and planning things, and that piece of the puzzle didn't fit for me, because I also love to relish things in the moment. And I'm sure I've got the faults of 7, but that particular thing I couldn't relate to.
Well, you've been on this journey since 2009.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was that year. Yeah.
Well, I would imagine that you've become aware over time. But a lot of the things that we did when we were younger, if you consider, and that may not fit for you, but I'll say, for me, when I was reflecting on that, because I very much live in that future, the orientation to time is everything that's in the future. And something that sounds so good can often be what trips us up. And I've said this I said it to my Instagram people. I had this big aha moment just this week, and I've been doing Enneagram work for about 12 years. But this planning, seems like such a good thing. And I'll be honest, in regards to this community, I have planned out the wazoo. I've rewritten things. I've like, oh, I have to add this. Oh, there's just one more thing. And so I really have just been in that mind. It's just consumed me to where I really have kind of disregarded some of the things that were really precious to me. And one of those is just time with friends. And so, yeah, we've all kind of been not hanging out with friends like we used to. But I think people are getting a little more going out a little bit. And so a friend of mine, that she's been my friend for 40 years. I mean, we call each other our heart friends. We've been through everything together. And I haven't been with her. Our lives got crazy. She has had some things happen. So we decided let's just get together and have some coffee. So we set a time for 10 o'clock in the morning last Thursday, and we met for coffee. And 5 hours later, 5 hours, I hadn't had breakfast. I hadn't had lunch. I didn't even know I was hungry. I wasn't hungry because I was so present with her that I literally sat there and cried with her. We laughed, we cried, and I was like, this is life. And when my focus is in something that I feel like it matters that I'm prepared. Of course it does. But when that planning when you get fixated on it, then you miss. And that's the point of this. We miss the gifts that are right here in front of us. I'm just telling you that honestly. That happened to me just this last week. And so I think that's what I'm hoping we'll reflect on when we look at these is we all have something that we're not even aware that we're doing because it looks so good on the outside. For type 3s, it's so good to be getting those projects done and trying to be, better at your craft or at your whatever, until you realize I'm forgetting all of the things that I've actually accomplished up to this point. You're so focused on the need to accomplish more that you forget. I have really done some really wonderful things with my life. Let me give myself a little breather, pat on the back. And that's what I'm hoping that we can look at. We do. I think it's Brian McLaren, if anybody's familiar with him, says what you focus on determines what you miss. Lee, did you have any, or Ricky, anybody?
Well, I got a big question mark, and that's what happened to me. The reason being is because one of the things that I left without saying the last meeting was that I've been always looking for a tribe, for my tribe, for a place where that I can, I can be accepted the way I am, and I can accept others the way they are. Which it doesn't happen always. For example, in my family with my parents, I was, like I said before, I wasn't a banker and I wasn't a priest. So, and still wasn't accepted. I mean, they loved me the way they did, but I wasn't really accepted as I was, as I am, still not. My mother's still praying for me to convert to Catholicism. Not gonna happen. Anyways, but I know that I'm supposed. Well, I need to have that tribe. On the other hand, I don't want to be that needy. I want to hold my own. I got so accustomed to do things on my own and be by myself and all that I'm afraid of losing or not being able to enjoy with other people. I'm always in my mind. And I want to get out. I want to do stuff, I found in my family, but once I married Maggie, I found in this family a door to spread my wings and know myself and know others a little bit better. So that has been a blessing. But still looking for that tribe.
I think we all want that tribe. Again, the video from Charles Eisenstein. It's what he says. We all have to lift each other. We can't do this alone. And especially when you begin to change the dynamics of the family system. This happens a lot of times in families who have someone in the family who is an addict. You know this better than anybody, right? Yes, because Ricky works with rehabilitation, with the drug and alcohol and addicts of many different forms. I don't know what all you do, but I know this for a fact that when the addict gets healthy, the whole family dynamics change because you have created a life around the addict. And so when they step out of the routine of the dance that the family has learned to do together, even though they would tell you it's detrimental, it's devastating. We wish he would change, blah, blah, blah. We wish he would get clean and all of that. And then they get on that path and it throws everybody, their center of gravity is just, is that right?
Right. Once the addict changes, then the spouse and the whole family says, who in the world are you? I don't know you. You were better before because we knew who you were and now we don't. So yeah, that's it. It's an interesting dynamics within the family or friends or whatever,
And it happens in many different situations. We've talked about our spiritual journeys. A lot of us have had breaking from the old family traditions, and that upsets the apple cart. For me, when I became really intentional about my Enneagram work, there was a little bit of a pushback because it's like, I was the party planner. I was. I still like to have fun and I still plan parties, but I began to step back intentionally because if you knew me several years ago, I was a very big presence, and I don't say that, bragging, but it's like the old stereotype of I'm here, let's get the party started, was that because I love to have fun. And I would really push almost my idea of fun on other people. I was thinking, oh, I'm just getting you out of your shell. Come on, let's all do this. Because I didn't know that, I honestly did not know that my idea of fun was not everybody else's idea of fun. And, it was, so when I began to really consider other people, how I saw their types and what they needed, even the stances that we've talked about. Don't try to push somebody who's in the withdrawing stance. Don't pull him out onto the dance floor. That's just awful. So, but then people would ask me, what's wrong with you, Danae? You don't seem yourself. Are you okay? Well, if I said, I've just decided to step back a little bit and let you guys take the show and you be the fun one. And it's the same thing as the addict. We don't know what to do. We don't know how this dance goes. But pretty soon, when I began to just let go of that need to be that one, well, other people, they got to rise to the occasion. They got to see their place. That's what I'm saying. It was really a blind spot. And what seemed like in my mind, such a good thing. Well, why wouldn't everybody want to just come to the party and have fun? And when something tragic happened, I would help them see, well, here, let's look for the silver lining. Let's not sit with grief. And, that's been a real eye opener for me. It was a floater. I did not know. So, okay, well, I'm not going to force you to come forward and say anything.
I can speak to it a little bit
Okay.
if we have time, but I don't want to. Okay.
You do.
I too, they call it a blind spot for a reason, right? My perception of it was just completely different than the reality of it. Which is, I didn't think of myself as a negative person, right? I thought of myself as a very realistic person, but it just so happens I'm a type 1. Everything that I see needs to be improved, right? Or I can look around and see 10 things that are perfectly adequate, and I focus on the one that isn't, right? And it's one thing for me to do that myself, but the sort of second layer of that blind spot is that I presumed everybody else was running around noticing the same things,
Mhm.
right? And just choosing not to act about them, or choosing a different path than I would to do whatever it was, right? Which is very confusing,
Mhm.
right? And I think that we do that in 9 different ways, right? Like, Danae, you're saying, I'm trying to get you out on the dance floor because I know what fun is, right? And you don't appear to be having it. And so I'm trying to invite you into it, right? And
it.
that's the same thing, but with the 1 type structure, the invitation is, hey, you didn't notice this is wrong, so let's get busy fixing it, right? Which is received in a completely different way, like in a more negative way, right? Because it's not, hey, let's have fun. It's like, hey, let's unscrew this up, you know? And the other kind of observation that I wanted to make was, like, we're talking about this through the lens of like addiction and recovery, but I have learned from so many teachers, I can't always properly attribute who taught me what, but here's some folk Enneagram knowledge, right?
Good.
Cobbled together in my own brain space, which is, in the end, the people around us, if we change, those relationships change, even if they don't change a bit.
That's right.
Because we do, right? And people are comfortable with the familiar and expect us to show up, right? They may not like the negative parts of one, but if somebody wants a job done right, and if I said I'd do it, I'll show up and do it, and you won't have to worry about the details, here's the finished product. They want me to show up like that.
Mhm.
But they don't want me to show up having an opinion about how they did something suboptimally, right? So it's like everybody wants the sunshine. And for 7 too, it's like, if you show up not 100 watts bright, then you get this reinforcement, are you feeling okay? You need, you sure? And it's like that triggers that brain to show up in the way that it normally does, because now here you're disappointing people and you don't look good. What's like, so
Yeah, that's not what we've decided you're here for. So
right.
Right.
Your role
let's get it
is
together.
all the stuff we like and none of the stuff we don't. You know, so you can't win. It'll be, you're not grieving, right? You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's that part of the dance with the handout that you sent to us of like, here's this idealized thing that I think I have to be, and here's this avoidance of what I fear I can't be. And our personality is just showing up to try to balance that, right? When really it only lets us see that half of the coin, if that's what we're trying to avoid and trying to achieve, right? And that the presence of noticing it that you're talking about, of allowing that discomfort, of allowing that uncertainty, that unfamiliar
Right.
feeling, and just staying there with it, is kind of the where the magic happens piece.
You really said that beautifully. That's it. It's not just what we do, but what we avoid. We want to do this and we want to avoid doing that.
Mhm.
Every type, the 6, I have a dear niece, bless her heart. I love her to death. I don't know why I said bless her heart. She's wonderful, but she's married to a type 1. And I asked her during COVID, I said, how did you and her husband handle this? Because, she really was working to make sure all the worst case scenarios, which I know that's very stereotype of a 6, but she genuinely was doing that. And she said this that has stuck with me. She said, as far as her husband, who was a type 1, he wanted to do it right, and she didn't want to get it wrong. Now, it was the same outcome. They were each planning the same things, but their motivations were totally different. And that's a whole thing we'll talk about later. But, what is your core motivation? If it is the fear that I won't have everything lined out, and Ricky, even when you're saying I'm wishing for a tribe, when the focus is this is going to offend somebody, or this will disrupt the family, this is going to be, when people find out I've left, this thought or this belief, then how do I prepare for all of those situations? And one of the most beautiful things you've said is your relationship with Maggie. Well, it's a small community, and I hope on some level you find that this community is here just to let you share with us and know that how valuable your insight is. If we were just all 7s, that'd be kind of boring. Sorry, Mary. No, no offense.
Let's have a party then.
Huh?
Let's have a party then.
See,
Hey.
There you go. We wouldn't even look at our scotomas. That's a great word. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you these slides, but I've thought about this with these. I may just kind of go through them quickly, because the truth is your journal prompts for tonight are literally what the slides are. But the only reason I want to go through them is because when you get yours, the journal prompts, more than likely, and hopefully, because you are your business. It's not up to you to point out, everybody else's. So you're going to focus on your journal prompt, but maybe just kind of getting a little picture of this and the other types. But I am going to try to, go fast. I do record these. I put them up on YouTube. They are unlisted. So the only way you would get to listen to them is if you requested a link. So if you do, or you just say, hey, can you just send me the slides or whatever, I'll be happy to do that. But, oh, yeah, okay. All right, let me try this technology thing here. Ta-da. All right, I have to minimize so I can see the screen. Okay, we're in week 3 of module 1. And next week will be the last week we talk about the caterpillar. It's like, yay, that's where the good part comes. But as the caterpillar grows, its exoskeleton becomes tight, so it sheds it. He is still just in the stage of just eating. So I've equated that to us in the consuming. We are still building our stories when we are in that stage. We're developing our sense of identity, and we continue to expand our ideas. We outgrow some of those ideas, and they begin having, or actually they just begin having more layers to them. They just grow and grow until we eventually feel like we have this whole sense of what our identity is. So tonight I just want to talk about the childhood wounding messages. you may or may not be familiar with these. I'm going to go back to screen and can I just get a show of hands? Who's familiar with the childhood messages? Okay, well then, these are wonderful. Now, let me just say, before we go into these childhood messages come in all sorts of ways. The literal words may have never even been spoken, but as a child, we all have this filter that we begin to gather information in. Sometimes we begin to say, my sense of security was threatened. I felt threatened. And it could have been something as simple as, say you were a 3-year-old and your mom had a baby, right? So she's got to feed the baby, but she's not doing the exact same thing she did with you. So now you feel traumatized, and people throw that word around. But I'm just saying, we develop these childhood messages in different ways. It could have been a teacher. It could have been no one in particular, other than just the way you took in that information and developed your message. So let me minimize again. And let me just say this, for those of us that are parents, we could have been a 100% perfect parent, and your child will still develop a wounding message. I mean, I don't even understand where my children got it. I'm pretty sure I was a perfect parent. Ha ha ha. That is so not true. So as a child, these messages, like I said, may have never been said verbally, but our child's mind begins to build a defense mechanism very early in life through our own unique filter and life experience. So these messages were either were another piece of information we consumed in response to our life circumstance. They reinforced how we felt safe and loved. And conversely, believing the opposite to be true causes us to believe our ability to be loved and safe are threatened. This is what we're questioning. Is that true? So I will just quickly go through these. Every one of them will have this, consider this. And it's basically, what if we turned the message around? We're going to talk about that later when we get to the weeks where I bring in Byron Katie, and it's turning our messages around, but it's just another way of questioning. Is this true? So for type 1s, it's not okay to make mistakes. That was the childhood message that they heard. So their defense reaction is, okay, then I got to really work hard to follow the rules, be responsible, be reasonable. And this is so big. Catch my mistakes before others do, right? So that striving for excellence. And the self-talk that they carried was, the world is imperfect and I must work towards improving it. I must be good and right and perfect and avoid mistakes. I must distinguish between right and wrong and apply myself diligently to make the world better. So when we go over to consider this, it's how could you reframe that? How could you turn that around? And I just said for type 1s, what if you said, I'm not ashamed nor afraid because everyone makes mistakes. I don't need to prove my goodness to be loved. And that is again, that defense mechanism that we build up once we have this thought in our head. I can't make a mistake. I have to do it right. I'll have to find my own mistakes. And along the way, I will see everything else that needs improving too. All the while thinking, I can't be the one to make mistake because my safety and my ability to be loved will be questioned. So just learning to kind of twist that message around just a little bit. What if you said as a 1, I don't need to prove my goodness to anyone. I'm just loved for who I am. Type 2. If you know a type 2, we don't have any 2s in the group, but they are just, well, everybody is a wonderful type. I keep saying that. But the type 2s really got the message early that it wasn't okay to have their own needs. A lot of times a young 2 will learn early on that if if I take care of somebody else, even in elementary school, somebody needs a pencil, somebody needs paper. Oh, here, I'll help you. I'll give it to you. And then you get this feedback of, oh, people love it when I take care of them, when I take care of their needs. So my defense becomes, I got to put my needs on the back burner because I'm going to earn your love through selflessness and generosity. The self-talk is people depend on me for help. I must earn the love and appreciation of others by being there for them. I am only worthwhile if I am liked and needed. I deserve love because I am so loving. Again, we're turning that message around. What if you said, I can give and receive, knowing that the needs and the desires of my own heart are my birthright. You don't have to always be the one taking care of everyone else to the exclusion of your own needs. Type 3, it's not okay to have your own feelings and identity. The defense reaction is, I have to hide my insecurities and feelings with success and accomplishments. Then I'll be worthwhile. And we know this from a lot of childhood 3s that we've spoken to or look back on our own life, that what may have seemed like a really wonderful thing from a parent or a teacher to applaud your accomplishments became this message of, oh, well, I am loved when I'm successful. I'm loved when I get all A's. I'm loved because I got the lead in the school play. And everybody loves that about me. So I'm going to adjust my identity for whatever pleases you. Whatever I need to be appreciated by you, that's what I'll be. So I'm going to put my own feelings aside. I'm going to maybe just become, I say the actor, a lot of 3s are actors, but I will act in whatever is the way that pleases you. And so they hide their insecurities until later, when you begin this work, you can say, no, I don't want to always be performing. But the self-talk, when we're in that state, is the world values winners. Well, that may be true, but the message that I must succeed at all costs, I must avoid failure, I am what I do. To earn my place, I must be the best at what I do. This makes it very, very difficult for a type 3 who actually struggles with performing well. Maybe they did all of their life and now they didn't get that big prize that they thought would show the world, I am worthy of your love. They didn't succeed. They may have failed out of a course. It's really hard when they think that the world values them because of their success. So to just consider turning that message around, yeah, it's okay to express my own thoughts and feelings, knowing that I am truly valued just for me, not for what I do. That takes a lot of work for a type 3. Type 4s. This one sounds really, maybe if you are a type 4, it's like, yeah, I get that. But I think it sounds funny maybe to those of us who read their childhood messages. It's not okay to be too functional or too happy. Well, they begin to build this persona of nobody truly sees me for who I am. And they think there's something just genuinely missing in them. So they say, if I express too much of any emotion, then people won't understand that I really am missing something. I am unique. So if I just go along and express all the joy or all the emotions, then I'm just going to blend in with the crowd and nobody will see me for who I am. So the self-talk is something is missing. I must find what is missing in my life. I must be true to my purpose and express my authentic self. I must create beauty and meaning for myself and for the world. And so a lot of times a type 4, who I love deeply, I love them all, but I've learned to love a type 4 so deeply because they feel that total range of emotions, where some of us are very uncomfortable with a certain aspect of emotions. Grief and sorrow don't come naturally for us. So type 4s almost love to wrap up in melancholy, or, they love a dark, cloudy, rainy day. Not always, and that sounds very negative, but they feel comfortable there because they feel deeply. So if they show themselves not as maybe different, they may dress more, different, then they'll just get lost in the crowd. So to turn their childhood message around might be to say, it really is okay to feel as happy as I long to be, because I am fully seen and accepted for who I am. That breaks my heart sometimes, to think I can't express the joy that I really would like to, because it's going to get misconstrued as everything's okay with me. And it's not. I'm missing what you have. So type 4s, I love that about them, but I want them to be able to see you're accepted for all sides of your emotions. In fact, not just accepted, so valued and so needed. Type 5s, it's not okay to let your guard down because you won't be able to handle things competently. Now that's a childhood message. And if you're a young type 5, and you think, it's up to me to know the answers to things. You've developed this early. You're in that withdrawing stance. So I go into my mind and figure it out. I have to know the answers. That's how I'm safe. And the defense reaction becomes, it's not okay to let my guard down because you won't be able to handle things competently. I must develop mastery in a subject to survive. And I might add, to survive, I should have said, and to be loved. It's the value that we think this defense reaction brings. It's safety and it's loved. This is how I am loved, because I am competent. So the self-talk is, the world is intrusive. I must protect my resources and energy so that I can think. I must be self-sufficient and not depend on others too much. I must understand and make sense of my world. I don't need much, but I need my space. So if we turn that around a little to say, I don't need to withdraw to conserve resources, nor do I always have to have all the answers. Again, this is one of the types that's in the withdrawing stance. Types 4 and 5 and 9 often will find themselves pulling away from the crowd. A lot of times it's pulling away inside their mind. They may be in the room with you, but a type 5 is often just thinking, how do I need to prepare and be prepared to show my competence? Type 6s, it's just not okay to trust yourself. That's a message they got early on. And wow, if you're a young type 6, what a sense of nothing is safe. You begin to develop this when you're very young. So you build this defense. I can't even trust myself. I won't be safe until I find someone or something to trust. That sense of it's not inside me. I need to find the people who can provide safety for me. So the self-talk becomes, the world is a threatening and unsafe place. I must be prepared, be loyal. People can count on me. Be careful who you trust, but I must not be afraid, and I can't let my guard down. I must protect myself, and I also must be loyal. So wow, what a dance. When we talk about a dance, it's that I don't trust me. Can I trust you? Who can I find? I have to develop a group who I can look up to. Who's the authority on this subject? Who knows? Who can I go to? I'll be loyal, but I need to be prepared and be safe. So beginning to turn that childhood message around, is it's a slow thing. Take one small thing and say, yeah, I can trust myself here. Yeah, I trust others. But if they're not around, I can trust my inner knowing. And it's a conscious decision to address this blind spot that I keep talking about. If that's the message and you believe that message and you don't ever question it, then you can't. You can't, because you're valued, because I know how to make sure everyone is secure. I will develop the strength around me and you can trust me. Now, I have said this before, if I'm going on a hiking trip, I'm going with a 6 because they are coming prepared for anything. I do love that. Okay. Type 7. It's not okay to depend on anyone for anything. Well, that sounds like a crazy childhood message, but somehow young type 7s realized, or they believed, that there wasn't really certainty in life. And so it may be, you may have moved a lot. So you couldn't really get really attached to relationships when you were young. Maybe you changed schools often, whatever the situation. Or maybe things were not right in your family. So you developed this sense that I have to learn to depend on me, not anyone else. But I'm living in pain. So if I just stay distracted, I won't feel my grief. Okay, I'm learning to handle the ropes by myself. This is scary. I can't depend on anyone, but I sure won't show anybody that I'm afraid or sad. So I'm going to stay distracted. That's why 7s are always planning for the future. So their self-talk is, the future is full of exciting possibilities and I must experience it all. I'm okay. I deserve what I want. What's next? I must move forward and I must have my freedom. Wow, that's a burden to carry, until maybe you can turn that around and go, you know what? There will always be people I can depend on who will support me both in my times of joy and my times of grief. That is a real paradigm shift for someone who is so used to making sure I keep the pain and the grief away. I'll just focus on the next possibilities. I don't need to depend on you to take care of this for me. I got it. And then you don't got it. And when you let that guard down, and you begin to say, is that true? Have I never had somebody that I could depend on? You begin to say, no, there are people and they love me. Even though I may have found out that grief is something I have to deal with. And they still loved me when I got sad, when I got angry even. I can depend on people in both my joy and my grief. Type 8. It is not okay to be vulnerable or to trust anyone. Now that's different than depend on anyone. Type 8s have trouble with trust. Again, it's different than 6s. So their defense reaction is, if I am totally self-sufficient, I won't get hurt. So whereas when a type 6 says, I need to look outside of myself, I don't trust myself, who can I look to? A type 8 says, it's me. I am totally self-sufficient. I don't get hurt. And the self-talk becomes, the world is a tough and unjust place. Only the strong survive. I'm a rock. I must not be weak. I must be in control and do it my way. And again, that type 8 has so many facets to it. Not only does he want to be in control, there's that fear of being controlled, because vulnerability feels like I'm going to get hurt. I won't be loved if I am not that rock, if I'm not the strong one in the group. So I'll just bully my way through something. I don't mean bully. That was a bad choice of words. I'm like a bull, I'll forge ahead. When an 8 lets that guard down, and says, I can be vulnerable and trust people. Oh my gosh. I know this firsthand because my father was a very strong-willed 8. And I carry that 8 wing myself. So I knew how to go head to head with him. And I was one of the few people that did. So I understand that. When my dad found out he had a brain tumor, he was 61, and he was just the strongest person I'd ever known. You know, he just took care of things. And in those last 3 months, from the time he found out he had the brain tumor till the time he passed, it was only 3 months. That shell was just gone. And the vulnerability, the people that he had butted heads with the most were the ones he wanted around him. I'm not saying it took him to the end of his life to become vulnerable. He could be the most loving, tender person, but in just certain situations, because he really saw himself as a champion for the underdog, which is a wonderful part of 8s. They are the ones who will champion the underdog. So they think that that's how they have to be, strong as a rock. So when they turn that around and realize they can be vulnerable, it's just a beautiful opening. Type 9, it is not okay to assert yourself. However that happened when they were young, they learned not to rock the boat. So I just kind of will not make my needs known. I'll just kind of take care of myself. The defense reaction is, if I don't rock the boat, everything will be okay. That need to just keep the peace. So don't say, I need much. Everybody will be fine. So the self-talk, I'm okay as long as the people around me are okay. The world would be a better place if people could just treat each other with respect. So I must keep this peace. I must be tolerant and accepting. And so to turn that around and say, I can assert myself because my presence matters. That's the big awakening, is for a 9 to say, it's one thing to say, I don't need to, excuse me, be too assertive or argue or anything, but to not recognize their presence matters so much that asserting their self is not rocking the boat. We need your presence. That's an unfolding into a beautiful type 9. So you will get these in your handout, but the question is going to be, how did this belief set the foundation for the story of you? And I can't answer that for you. I can answer it for me, but it's going to be different for every single person. Not just, oh, it's the same for all type 7s and same for all type 3s. Your life circumstances will play very much into how this became the setting for your story. So we're going to question that. The other question is, how does your identification with this story manifest in your relationships, right? So if you're a type 9 and you say, well, my presence doesn't really matter, I won't argue with you, we won't have arguments, we'll just keep everything peaceful. Well, that sounds like, oh, what a perfect relationship. Well, that would be what I call the deceitfulness of good. It may look good, but you're not bringing yourself to the relationship fully. And we could go through each type and question that. How would your relationships grow if you release the thought, if not me, then who? That question of if not me, then who is our attachment to that identity that we have, or that story that we've used to form our sense of identity. Well, if I'm not the one who makes sure all the first aid equipment comes on the trip and knows where every mile marker is, where the rest stops are. If I'm not the one, then who's going to do it? It's up to me. Well, is that true? And who would you be if you said, yeah, let's look at this together. I trust me, I trust you. Each time. That question of, if not me, then who? Type 2s. If I'm not the one taking care of everybody's needs, then who will? Again, when you take that on as your role, then oftentimes people don't rise to the occasion because you haven't let them, because that's become part of your identity. So I will do stop share, come back to you. Again, this is exactly what you're going to get in your handout. I hope this is something that is beneficial in reflecting and beginning to just say, I understand where all the layers of me were formed. It wasn't just that I came out of the womb and all my story was there. We've built this over time, and it's necessary. This is the main thing I want to affirm about this part of our journey is all of this is necessary. It seems like a really weird plan, right? Why didn't we just come fully aware? Why do we have to struggle through life? It seems like a weird system until you realize I have to have a story so I can relate to other people. If I've never been on a journey that required me to confront my beliefs and maybe break out of that, then how can I be of service to you? I've done most of the talking, and I really hope that you're going to feel free. I don't know that I had the chat open, that you will feel free at any point to go, that doesn't make sense. And say, I don't, like Mary did. She can't see herself really in that, the planning, because you apparently have learned to enjoy the present. That's the goal, is to enjoy the presence. Oh, thank you. Chat is open. So let me open the floor for comments before we close it up for tonight. Y'all are quiet tonight. You were chatty last week.
Yeah, again, the big question. I was talking about my need for a tribe, but at the same time, I don't want to be needy. So I need to learn to trust myself.
I love that.
How. That's a big how. How to do that. I guess I'm gonna have to find that out.
That is your journey of discovery, because it's there.
Mhm.
It is there. And maybe the people that you're looking for are looking for you. I was out on a walk today. I try to get a couple miles in every day. No, I wish every day, every other day. And I walked down the road that I walk down all the time. And there's this elderly man who lives in one of the houses, and he was coming out to get his mail as I was coming. And he stopped and he goes, well, I haven't seen you in a while. I said, well, it was snowing last week, and so it's been a little cold. And he said, well, it's really good for you to be out here. And I said, are you doing okay with, COVID? Have you stayed healthy? And he just said, well, we have, but the last of my siblings just passed. And he said, and I don't have my parents. I mean, he's elderly. He said, my parents are gone and all my siblings are gone, and it's just me. And I said, well, you must be very special because you're still here. And I didn't know what to say to him, really. And he goes, oh, I wouldn't say that. I said, well, I think that woman right over there, you're pretty special to her. And he just kind of didn't know what to say. He said, I hope so. you can't imagine who is out there looking for you to step up and say, I see you. I am here to just say, you have a purpose here. If it's just with one person, that's a little tribe. That's a little tribe, but it's a start. Okay, then I'm going to wrap it up. We will wrap up caterpillars next week, and I will introduce my most favorite part of what's in the caterpillar and why I know that what happens in nature is the same thing that's happening in us. I hope you can join us next week, and we will wrap up this stage and get into the next part. That's it. Thank you, Megan. I hope you're doing okay. You were quiet. All right. See you all next week.
Thank you,
Bye,
Danae.
Danae. Thank
Bye.
you.